My next guest found herself part of a group of young women and children forced to surrender their bodies in some of the most evil rituals imaginable. Her own child was used in a human sacrifice ritual. It was only 3 years ago that Lauren Stratford gained the courage to talk about her horrifying experiences publicly. She still receives harassing phone calls and threats from members of the cult. She's the author of this book called Satan's Underground. As a child, my next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity. My next guest treats ritually abused children in her therapist practice. She feels that the problem is much more widespread than any of us can imagine. Says there's no doubt in her mind that the children and adults that she treats are telling the truth. Tina Grossman, we're glad to have all of you join us here on the show. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
And so you were ritually abused.
I was born into a family that believes in this.
And this is, does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
Really? And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before. And
so when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I blacked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal. Mm-hmm. I always thought
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to, you know...
Whose babies?
There were people who bred babies in our family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not, or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back.
Now, you were telling us earlier that the practice with the Kilroy death was a religion called
Palamayombe, which not all people who practice Palamayombe obviously sacrifice. I think what we're looking at is a worship of evil here.
Right.
Taking normal or standard religions and perverting them to the worship of evil.
Right. And I just want to emphasize that you don't have to be Caribbean to do it.
No.
Yes.
The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean, it's not a very typical thing. I just want to point that out.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies. But anyway, so you witnessed the sacrifice?
Right. When I was very young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant.
And the purpose of sacrifice is to what? Is to bring you what? What are you sacrificing for?
For power.
Uh-huh. Power. And so, were you ever used? Were you ever used yourself?
I was molested. I was raped several times.
Mm-hmm. And what's your mother doing?
She's...
In all of this? What's her role in all of this?
I'm not exactly what her role is. I haven't, recovered all of my memories, but her family was extremely involved. Mm-hmm. She brought me to it. Both of my parents brought me to it.
And where is she now?
She's lives in the Chicago metropolitan area. She's on the Human Relations Commission of the town that she lives in, and she's an upstanding citizen. Nobody would suspect her. Nobody would suspect anybody involved in it. There's police officers involved in it. There's, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs involved in it. I mean, it's not the person, who looks scummy that's involved in it. It's someone who looks normal.
That's right.
Yeah, you wanted to say what?
Oprah, as difficult as this seems, and of course people maybe don't track these things as much as I do. But in Monrovia, Liberia, a couple of years ago, about 7 gentlemen, one of which was trying to become mayor. These were politicians, very political figures in Monrovia, Liberia. Sacrificed, they had an abduction of a 6- and 7-year-old boy, and the religion was juju. Certainly not all people do that in juju, but they believed by sacrificing these children that they would be able to gain political favor through this supernatural belief system. So while it's very difficult to understand that human beings can do this, I think what we should be concerned about are these motives and belief systems, and understand it's not rampant, but it's possible.
Over one thing that I think is important to note too, in the Mark Kilroy case, several of the people that were involved in that killing were American citizens. Several of them were involved in college. Sarah Aldretti, the witch of the cult,
who is still
unapprehended, was a person who was an honors type student. She was well respected within the college. No one would have ever expected, even her own family did not know that there in her somewhat kind of separate apartment that she had an altar set up for different kinds of sacrifices. They didn't know that. And one thing I want to make very clear too, that if somebody has information about any of these individuals, or they have information concerning any kind of ritualistic type killing of human beings, that information needs to be related to your local police department. They will know who to get in contact with, or directly into the Cameron County Sheriff's Department there in Brownsville, Texas.
But let me just say this to you, Ms. Maddox. If, for instance, her neighbors suspected something was going on in her neighborhood, I don't know how you go to the police and say, this upstanding family of Rachel's, you think that they're doing devil worship in their house.
It is really hard because they think, first they think you're the kook.
That's right.
Instead
of us on the Human Relations Committee.
Yeah, I tell you, it's interesting. In Austin, Texas, just before, probably a month before the Mark Kilroy disappearance, there was a symposium on Satanism and the occults. And frankly, most people were there giggling and not taking it fully serious, and some of us did not even regard it as that serious. And obviously, one of the points we need to make very clearly is that both law enforcement and the general public has got to take these kind of things very serious, and there should be intervention if at all possible.
All right, we'll be right back. Back in a moment.